Have you ever done a deal or thought about doing a property deal, but your gut told you not to do it, but you went and did it anyway? That's exactly what I did, but I almost lost everything in the process. In this video, I'll be breaking down how you can flip property without even buying it, and how much money did I actually make from my assisted sale, and what happens when the seller threatens to stop your sale. Let's get into it. Yes, sir. Now, I'm not gonna bore you with the intro because I know you came here for the meat and the potatoes and the storyline, and to find out, is Keenan really gonna move to Dubai and live off the profit that is made from this property flip, or the lack of? That was the cliffhanger, by the way. I'm hoping you're on the edge of your seat right now, just waiting for that moment, that final profit reveal, and also how you can actually do this yourself.
So you're telling me there's a chance? Yeah!
Now, short and sweet, my name's Keenan. I'm always looking to buy a property, and I also sell it as well. If you want to work with me, then just get in touch, okay? Even if you're looking to flip property, but have the funds, but just cannot be bothered to do all the hard work as well. Now, I need to give you some context about this deal. It's very important, otherwise none of it is gonna make sense. Now, I found these sellers. They were struggling to sell their property. They literally couldn't sell their property for love, money, or toffee for the price that they wanted, which was somewhat reasonable. Now, they had previous offers they didn't accept. I even offered them a cash offer for the property. Yes, I must admit it wasn't full market value. Now, they didn't accept my cash offer, so I had to get creative with it and offer them a creative solution instead, because they still wanted to sell their property and get close to their asking price. And bear in mind, that is the beauty of assisted sales, because you can almost get close to their asking price, or you could give them more depending on how much meat is on the bone. Now, if you're absolutely bewildered about what an assisted sale is, or how it works, or why the seller actually agreed to my offer, then I will touch on that a little bit later. But if you're interested in learning about this strategy, how you can flip property without buying it and help sellers, then check out my free webinar. I'm going into great detail. Or if you want exclusive content about this strategy to make it work for you, then check out my description below. Now, although the seller agreed to my creative solution, I just didn't have the right vibe that I usually have with other sellers that I've agreed this deal with. So I was a bit sketchy at the beginning, maybe because I was like on and off with the seller for a few weeks. Bearing in mind, it wasn't just like, yeah, go around there, get the paper signed, then do the deal. No, it wasn't like that. It took a few weeks, and eventually they said yes, but there's a lot of back and forth, hot and cold, cold and hot, but you just don't know what people are going through. So I still maintained contact, and I would say over the course, probably about 4 weeks, probably to get the deal done, it happened. Now, I don't want to fill you with false hope here. Property does take time. It's a slow burner. So that's just to give you some oversight of the timelines here for now. Now, although I wasn't completely confident with dealing with a seller, I still went ahead and did the deal anyway, only because I wanted the deal, first of all, and I seen an opportunity for the business to make some money. Now, although the margins were very tight for what they were, I said to myself, you know, there's still something that could be had here. As long as the seller's flexible with the price, I can kind of get them close to what they want, and I'll be able to get this sold for them, because for almost 2 years now, they haven't been able to sell their property for the price that they want. So they've got to think of plan C and plan D. They've already tried plan A, which is the agent. They've already tried plan B, which is getting offers off cash buying companies. They just wasn't getting it. Now, the deal was so tight that I didn't even pay for a solicitor to draft my paperwork, but I did pay for the seller's legal, so they were fully aware what they was getting themselves into, and they could lean on legal advice before getting into any arrangement with myself. It's very important that you do that for any seller. Now, I knew that if I had got a separate solicitor for myself, I would have been £1,200 down, and that could have actually went on the refurb itself. So it's a no-brainer for me. I wouldn't recommend doing that, but in times, you just need to evaluate your risk. Now, I was willing to take that risk, although, as I said, the seller to me was a bit sketchy, and that's the reason why I was so tight on the budget, thinking, I have to put the minimum amount of money into this deal, but still make it work and still make a story out of it. And I tell you what, even if I broke even or lost money, it would have taught me a valuable lesson especially on this deal, how to negotiate, how to just keep calm and all that good stuff, because they did threaten to kind of pull out the deal. Now, after back and forth negotiation, we finally agreed on a price that worked for them, but also worked for me. Yes, I would have liked more money out of the deal, but after understanding what their mortgage was, and also they had another loan, also a charge against the property, which in total amounted to 121,000. So I knew they would walk away with some money, at least £10,000. Now, bearing in mind, they have refinanced this property over the course of, I believe, 15 years of ownership. So if they didn't refinance that property, they would have actually had no debt on it. So you could consider that as irresponsible lending, or you may not. It depends on your perspective, okay? But the point being is that at least they would have walked away with something. And if you're thinking, why would somebody do an assisted sale? There's all sorts of reasons. And that is one of the reasons why somebody would do it, because they need to get something out of it. And likewise with me, I can get something out of it, which is the profit, which, you know, helps me keep the lights on. Now, in addition to the price, I also agreed to pay £500 up front. Now, that is completely non-refundable. It's part of doing the deal. Now, at that time, her daughter was due to get married. So they had to finance a wedding dress or pay the remaining. So I said, you know what, as an act of, or a testament of me being serious about helping you out and getting this over the line, let's just call it that. You could say it's another way of sweetening the deal. And it's always important to look at how you can make the deal work and compromise. It's not all about you making money at the same time. So pay that up front, also known as a consideration. Now, when you do these type of deals, have you ever heard of when someone says, I've bought a house for £1? That's because they need to put down some sort of monetary value in order to earn the right to do such a deal, okay? So instead of putting £1 down, which you would typically do, I put down £500. Now, I put that down because I knew I'd be able to make it back off the house sale. Now, with any property, you don't want to put more money into the deal than you need to, but it's just one of them. You have to compromise. Now, you're probably thinking, Key, if you do all this work, what happens if the property doesn't sell? Because it can happen. You can do all this work, and during that time, it wasn't selling at one point. But here's how you protect yourself, or one of the ways that you can protect yourself. Make sure that you do enough research on the property to feel confident on what you can refurb it at, but also sell it at as well. And that can only come from knowledge. And one way to get that knowledge is by joining the free webinar or getting your exclusive content in the description below. So that was an absolute shameless plug of me, but I just had to do it, yeah? I want the best for you, okay? Now, the seller was actually thinking the same thing. And the way I negotiated this was, look, if the property didn't sell within the first 6 months, I will give you £230 until it sells. Now, unfortunately, I couldn't really offer them the full mortgage payment simply because there just wasn't enough profit in the deal to do that. Although on my first deal, that's what I did. After 6 months, I would then agree to pay the mortgage until it was like, yeah, done and dusted. But I couldn't do this at this point. However, it was enough to relieve them from any financial strain of the mortgage. And of course, I had to pay for utilities and stuff like that. It's just part of the deal. I'm using the gas and electric and whatnot, so it's only right that I actually pay for it. So that's what was agreed. Now, let's jump into some more meaty stuff. Now, the plan was simple. Get it for this price and sell it for this price. So it's around about 20K-ish to be made. And I like to make a clear point. The seller knew exactly what the property may potentially sell for. If it sells above 160, then it's an absolute bonus, but I'm not relying on that. Now, I knew that this property would easily sell for around about that price, not only because we were competitively priced in the market, but there's a lack of supply as well. I had a story today about this guy who was struggling to sell a property at auction, and it was a flat. And later to find out, there's like loads of flats. You're talking like hundreds of flats being sold in one particular area. So if you are going to flip a property, just ensure that you look at the supply and demand. Now, I knew if we get it for this and sell it for this, we can actually drop the price and still make a bit of money, because similar properties were selling for like 170, 175, 180. So whoever bought this property was getting a bargain. And that was a way of protecting myself, because I knew that I didn't have to price it all the way at the top. Plus, speed is very important. Not only do I need a quick sale to relieve the seller of this property, but I don't need to be greedy. There's enough money to be made. But how could the money be made? Now, the only way I can make that happen is by keeping the refurb nice and tight. And as you could tell from the photos, you're talking a good scrub, repaint, recarpet, parts of the kitchen done, garden looking prim and proper, the lot, mate, okay? And that's exactly what I did. But the thing is, because the margins were so tight, I couldn't really outsource the work to people who I would normally hire, because it would just eat into the margins. And I kind of regret it and sort of don't, because if I didn't go for that experience, I wouldn't be able to learn the lessons. Although I am hard-headed, I won't be going through that process again. But I was relying on, how can I say, reasonable labor prices to make it work. But as part of that, with paying reasonable prices, these people didn't drive, and I'm thankful for them, because I couldn't have done it without them, to be fair. So I had to play the taxi man. I had to pick them up, take them to the job and all that stuff. And the thing is that this house that I was working on was like 45 minutes from where I was living at that time. So did I overstretch myself? Yes, I did. Was I just looking at the money signs to make it work? Yes, I was blindsided by that. And it cost me a lot of time, not only because I was working on the project as well, because you think that you have all these trade skills, so you want to, do the job. Just because you have the skills, it doesn't mean you need to employ them, okay? That is it, but I did. And I also got a good little vlog out of it, so if you want to check it out, you can if you want. But the point being is that, look, I knew that we could get the price that we wanted, and I knew that a first-time buyer would snap at the opportunity because it was competitively priced, and also it would work for a landlord as well. So the pool of buyers was so wide, it shouldn't have stayed on the market for longer than it needed to be, which I'll explain why it was standing on the market for too long and why it had taken so long to sell the property. Now, by the way, if you find this useful so far, please like, comment and subscribe. I'm trying to get these subscribers up, so if you want to do me a favor, you can. I'm going to be producing more content throughout the whole weeks and months for this year, so you're going to get the value that you're looking for if you are interested in flipping property and all that good stuff. And I just want to emphasize that it's important to understand why somebody would or wouldn't do an assisted sale. The reason why they went ahead with this deal, because you're probably thinking, and it's right to think like that, why would somebody agree to that price where they know that you can make that amount of money? Sometimes it could be a case of the sellers just don't have the cash to refurb the property like I did, or they just cannot see the vision. They don't think they can get this price, or they just don't have the energy. So that's where creative solutions come very useful in a marketplace, and it can be a powerful tool, especially because you picture a seller like that has tried multiple agents, no luck, cannot accept an offer below a certain price, which most of the offers did come at that price. So what do? And that's where you can come in and I come in. We can offer these creative solutions, but only if you have the knowledge to do that. Now I'm going to take some accountability for the project and why it took so long to sell, because if we don't take accountability, we just don't grow as people, okay? Now, at that time, I was refurbing 2 properties, going back and forth, which was like half an hour in between. And then I had to travel another 45 minutes to get to home. On occasions, I was actually sleeping in that property just because I had to make it work. Now, there was other reasons why that project was taking so long to sell, which I'll touch upon, but it's important to note that this relationship that I had with the seller was declining, simply because her expectations were all the way up here, and I didn't set them completely from the beginning. Like, people often think, yeah, you can sell a property within 3 months. It's typically not the case. Refurbing it, things can go wrong with the refurb, which it did, because I actually found out that the electrics needed to be completely replaced. At the beginning of my video or the vlog, I said the consumer unit may need replacing, but on occasions, you can get away with it as long as the wiring is okay in the house. But if the wiring is dodgy, you just need to rewire the whole property, which had an effect upon the project. So I was thinking, well, what am I gonna do with this now? Should I just put it into the auction? I couldn't put it in the auction because then I may not have made any money, so what's the point? So I decided to, stick in during the refurb, get everything done. Everything was as good as it could be, given the budget. And I said to myself, you know what, I've just limited my pool of buyers. And that did have an effect upon when I did list the property for sale, it was kind of slow. Now the reasons why it was slow is because you have to imagine, if first time buyers are going to view this property, many people may not have 5-7 grand to rewire a whole property. People just want to have a product, especially first time buyers, that they can move into, furniture, pans, the lot, mate, that is it. And that's the important thing to note when you are flipping property. You need to deliver a product to someone on the market where they can just move into. Now, when the property was ready to be sold, I approached a number of estate agents. Some of them said I could get 180. I was like, yeah, all right, mate. Show me the comparables and I'll be confident in your advice of getting 180, sir. Do you think you could show me the comparables? How to the no? Unfortunately, there's good and bad in every industry, but if an estate agent tries to blow smoke up the wrong hole, just confidently ask them, could you show me comparables, sir, like for like? Point being, he wasn't able to. And guess what? I didn't choose that agent just because of dishonesty. But I went with a few other agents, meaning I brought them around, they give me their price and their verdict. But when it was time to list it with them, they wasn't happy with the agreement that I had with the seller. So that knocked the can down the road by a couple of weeks, because I was like, wow, who's gonna list this property now? So I was calling around, eventually I found somebody. So they got it onto the market, hunky-dory. I thought everything was smooth sailing. Now at that time, there was high interest rates. Now, you could say that had a bit of an effect on the property, but bearing in mind, it's a 160 property, and even if rates were as high as they were, it could still work for a landlord because the rent would be enough and all that stuff, to cover the mortgage payments. And anyone with a decent job would be able to pass the affordability checks to get that property, e.g. a first time buyer. Now, after the property being on the market for a few weeks and getting a few offers, it's not something that I wanted to accept. I was thinking, I've done all this hard work. I went through absolute mental turmoil and I'm going to accept a lower offer. It's not worth it, And I don't think the seller wanted a call from me saying, oh, can you drop the price a bit? Because I want to make sure I get X amount of money. It doesn't work like that. Although I did bite the bullet a bit by 3 grand, but understandably, it was due to the electrics. Now, during the process, I noticed that the property listing was losing a bit of steam and I couldn't just wait for interest rates to come down. I had to change the strategy, similar to how you would bring on a substitution in times of need. So I decided to approach another agent and make sure that not only will they be of assistance, but find out how they would market the property differently. Because we was getting the offers, we had a problem with getting more people through the door of quality. So it's not the property, it's how the property is being marketed. So what I liked about this agent, they had a Matterport sort of way of doing it. And it's like a 3D look of a house. So people can actually virtually walk around the property and see what the score is, which should be enough for them to want to book a viewing and see it for what it is. Now you could say it's a good thing and a bad thing, because good marketing not only gets people through the front door, should I say, shows them enough to intrigue them or raise curiosity to get them in the front door and show them what the property is about. So you may not want to reveal absolutely everything about it, because you want enough curiosity to compel somebody to view the property or want to view the property. And as you can imagine, the seller was growing in frustration as the weeks went by. So I took it upon myself to say, you know what, I've got to do the viewings now. I need to find out how the agent is conducting the viewings, because I want to know who's showing them about, how they present the property, And you could say you could do the viewings yourself because you are very invested in the property, and the agent may not be as equally invested in your success of this property, given they are probably selling properties at volume. So sometimes you need to pull up your big boy socks and do what you need to do to get the property sold. And that's exactly what I did. Now, I just wasn't completely happy with how it was being presented. So lo and behold, at that time of me being at the property and letting people in, the actual buyer was there, meaning I didn't find out until later he was the buyer when he made the offer, but introduced myself and answered any questions at that time. And although he liked the property, it was a landlord, by the way. He was buying it for his daughters, you know, something to hold on to in the family. So he made the offer with the agent. I said, yeah, it's okay. But he wanted to view the property again. So what did I do on the second view? And I was like, yes, I've got him now. I need to close the deal. So I showed him around the property. He wanted to check it out with his electrician because obviously he needs the price on the work that needs to be carried out. So I had to negotiate the price there and then with him, said, look, I can go down to X, Y, Z. You know, we settled for 157, okay? But let me break down the numbers and tell you exactly where the money went on this project. So I'm gonna break down the figures, how much it cost me to acquire it, refurb it, hold the property, and then eventually sell it. So let's head over to the assisted sale calculator and show you all the figures. So briefly, 3-bedroom terrace property, nothing special. Wasn't a leasehold. Purchase price, I agreed 131,000. It wasn't 131 and a half. I got that wrong. The option price was 132, only because remember when I told you I had to pay them £1,000. Now that £1,000 got added to the option price simply because money talks, and that was one of the ways to get that property over the line. So let's get over to the acquisition cost because I didn't fund it using any bank finance. So the consideration fee, as discussed, £500 up front, no arrears, didn't pay for a survey, didn't pay for any legal fees for myself to get into the deal. Had to pay for the sellers, no sourcing fee, all that came to that figure there. Now, breaking down the refurb, most of the budget really went to labor. As you can tell, £1,000 skip hire, waste, electrics, that included electrician turning up and charging me 150 just to say it's no good. And obviously I had to get somebody else in to do the sockets and lights and all that shebang. Plumbing, basic shower screen, all that. Carpentry, few doors that needed to be sorted out. Kitchen, worktop, the lot. Plastering, I plastered 2 walls, one downstairs and one upstairs. I couldn't get away with it once the wallpaper was removed. Now, decorating, that is mixed in between the labor and the decorating because I got the laborers to do some of the painting. That's good and bad. Anyway, flooring, that was for carpets throughout and lino downstairs in the kitchen. That's including the materials as well. Going through here, gardener, I've got a gardener to, you know, tidy the front and the back, job done. And then, yeah, materials all in, 950, paint, kitchen, worktop and little bits and bobs. So not a huge amount of materials that had to be acquired. Now, refurb was this figure here. When we come down to the holding costs, so if you remember the 6-month rule, if the property didn't sell within the first 6 months, I would pay them £230 each month. So eventually took 10 months in total, and that's why this is factored into the figures as well. Gas, didn't really use it, it was just a standing charge. Yes, the electric was used throughout those 6 months. Water, garden maintenance, a lot of people don't consider this, but it is a cost when you're refurbing it, especially if you haven't sold the property. You want to ensure that it's maintained throughout, so viewers can still get a good feel of the property, and it's a good impression, also known as curb appeal. Now, house cleaning throughout, yeah, went around there, spider webs, all that stuff. The 150, as a matter of fact, I did actually pay the seller 150 throughout, just as a gesture, because it seemed like things were quite tight on her end. So I thought, you know what, 150, and it's part of me saying, look, it's taking a bit too long. I feel like I was a bit too kind throughout the whole process, but you know, maybe not next time. So service charge, this is not taken into account simply because there's no leasehold. So in its entirety, it cost me that amount to hold the property. Selling costs now, ideally I would have wanted 160, didn't get it, 157. Cleaning fee is what was charged when the property was done and dusted. Agent fee, 1%. The thing about the agent fee, as a matter of fact, I chose the most expensive package because it gave me the flexibility if I wanted to walk away like 7 days after they listed it, I could. So there was 3 tiers. You had to pay up front, which was about $1,000 or so, or there's another one, and the one that I chose is what I just mentioned. It gave me some flexibility, so you get what you pay for. Didn't pay for marketing. Now the seller's legals, there's more on the way out because you've got other associated fees attached to that. My legal exit, of course, because things went downhill, I needed a solicitor to ensure that I got paid. So hence the reason why I got the best in the business to do the job for me. Now, all that was irrelevant. So the total selling cost came up to that. Let's check out the profitability. Now, based on these figures here, 157, of course, this will change depending on what I got, but I can't do that, unfortunately. So that was 157. Total equity that was up front, as you can tell, acquisition costs, refurb, holding, some of the selling costs. Obviously, the agent fee isn't taken into account because there's no point, given that this is the money that you pay up front. You don't pay an agent up front, along with obviously the legal fee as well, which is taken out of the proceeds of the sale. Now, that's what I paid all up front. And then you've got this stuff, and eventually I walked away with this in my pocket as profit. Really and truly, you could argue that it was less than that because my time wasn't factored into the deal as well. So based on what I can get paid, you're probably talking around about 10, maybe even minus 10. So there you have it. Now, after I accepted the offer, it would take approximately 5 months to get the deal over the line, done and dusted. And by the way, this actually sold in December. I've been procrastinating about creating this content for the longest time, but eventually I've got it out and yeah, moving forward now. But the point being is that the solicitors were taking so long. The seller, as you could tell, was growing in frustration. Now, I have to pay them £230 every single month, which I did for I believe 4 months, which obviously took a cut in the profit margin as well. Not happy about that. It's just what it is. What I should have done is, speed up the project. I may not have paid more than I had to, but it's just another lesson. Now, it's completely understandable why the seller was frustrated, but it's kind of beyond my control after that point. So I had to compromise because she was threatening to put a hold on the whole sale. Although we've done all this work, it's almost there now. I think she just had enough. Now, I want to be honest with you about this because it gives you, the real stuff about this strategy if it's not executed properly, or you don't get the right sellout, or you bite off more than you can chew. Now, as part of compromising, once again, I said, look, I can give you more money than we initially agreed, as to kind of get myself out of the fire and sort of, do some level of making it fair in a way, given that they've waited so long. So I agreed to pay them £1,000. So some key lessons to take away here. Please, people, trust your instinct, because upon reflection, it had taken a lot of mental energy from me, and that's why I'm closing the chapter on this now, and that's the reason why I've taken so long to create this video. It's just a bit of a traumatic experience, to be fair, because I could have lost everything. A lot of money was on the line, in my opinion, to be fair. So some people may not be a lot of money, but I've worked hard for my money and I want to keep it as much as possible. So that's one way to look at it. Number two being, just because you're good on the tools, it doesn't mean you need to be on the tools. And if you need to make that project profitable by you working on the project, then it may not be the best deal. Now, it's very subjective, because if you can make 60 grand, 70 grand, whatever it may be on the flip, then it may be worth your time investing in the project. But remember, what happens if that property doesn't sell for whatever reason? Because property is very illiquid. You can't just, boom, get it sold like that. It takes a bit of time. But another way to look at it is that there's no right or wrong. It depends on where you are on your journey. Now, where I was on my journey, I was like, okay, I'm willing to put this time in to get this amount of money off the back of it, and hence the reason why I did it. And not only that, at least I've documented the journey and something to look back on. So don't let people dictate what is right or wrong. Yes, take it in with a pinch of salt, but always consider these factors. Now, overall, it was good and bad, because it cost me a lot of time where I could have been looking for more deals, which is what I'll be doing moving forward. So you gotta think about opportunity cost. Number three, avoid juggling too much. Just stick to what you're good at and delegate the rest. You've probably heard it before, but this is a subtle reminder. If you're hard-headed like me, then please take it on board. Number 4, assisted sales are a powerful strategy, but only if you understand how they work, how to structure a deal correctly, you'll be able to create more win-win situations instead of pulling up to a house, low-balling the seller, and then just getting kicked out the door or offending people. This is a way where you can work with the seller rather than against them. And not only that, if you cannot get access to credit, or you may not want to deal with any debt from bank loans, you can still make lumps of cash. Now, as you can tell, it doesn't come without its risks, but this is how you sidestep certain risks and ensure that you come out on top. But that only comes with knowledge, and you know what to do. Join the free webinar or get exclusive content in the description below. So how can we round this off? It's been a pleasant experience, filled with many lessons, and I wouldn't want it any other way. There's always a good story to tell out of troubled times.